in accordance with the principles of doublethink. It does not matter if the war is not real, or when it is, that victory is not possible. The war is not meant to be won. It is meant to be continuous. The essential act of modern warfare is the destruction of the produce of human labor. A hierarchical society is only possible on the basis of poverty and ignorance. In principle, the war effort is always planned to keep society on the brink of starvation. The war is waged by the ruling group against its own subjects, and its object is not victory over Eurasia or Eastasia, but to keep the very structure of society intact.
Distraction, as war correspondent Keith Harmon Snow.
Some war-loving politicians have been pushing for establishing a no-fly zone. This means bombing Libyan air defense systems, runways, and shooting down Libyan aircraft, an aerial invasion, something most Americans don't realize and most Libyans don't want.
People in the entire region remember what happened with the no-fly zone in Iraq. Hundreds of civilians were killed.
Thanks for having me. The crisis in Libya now driving up the price of oil. So with the fighting there escalating, is now a good time to invest in crude? Our financial expert gives his take.
Coalition military operations designed to enforce United Nations Security Council resolution.
Well, first I think we have to understand that this is not really a no-fly zone. A no-fly zone, in fact, implies a bombing campaign, and preparations are ongoing.
Some high-ranking officials have taken it so far as to joke about an attack on the African country. But is Libya any of America's business? And why not let the Arab world fend for itself?
There's absolutely no possible justification for the United States or even the EU to get involved in Libya. There's just nothing in their charters or there's nothing that would justify this. It's a civil war in a different country in which the details are very murky.
Leaders have moved swiftly to enforce a UN resolution for a ceasefire in Libya. After a meeting in Paris, French warplanes carried out the first strikes.
Under that United Nations resolution. To that end, earlier this afternoon, over 110 Tomahawk cruise missiles fired from both U.S. and British ships and submarines.
About the passage of this vote by the United Nations, 10 countries voting in favor. But then we have the BRIC countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, plus Germany, abstaining.
Voiced their misgivings about the military operation for more than a week now. The same about Brazil.
In addition to campaign calls, I also spend a lot of time on the phone listening to our European allies.
Clarity, and they want to have clarity on what's taking place. It's much easier just to get out of the markets when something like this, happens. Having it go over the weekend, it's a whole different story because now you have a little bit of time to digest all of this.
So obviously, I don't think anybody would suggest that the president or this coalition purposely timed this to fall at a time when maybe the markets wouldn't go berserk.
These strikes were carefully coordinated with our coalition partners. The targets themselves were selected based on our collective assessment.
Well, it's basically a psychological operation. There's an entire wing of the Pentagon and the State Department that's dedicated to psychological operations. These are perception management is the modern term. The previous term was propaganda. But psychological operation is to convince the American public or the English-speaking world and English news-consuming world that something's going on that may or may not be actually happening.
And other interests are much more appealing to a lobbyist. He has the ability not only to improve the image of the country in front of Congress, but also to try to find new markets, try to open up all sorts of joint ventures between the United States and that country. But again...
And what's happening against them is a war of aggression, with the media serving one side to portray the idea that Gaddafi is a terrorist and all these people have been killed and freedom fighters are involved. Freedom fighter, the language freedom fighter hasn't been used since the attacks by the Contras.
We will have no mercy and no pity. Speaking of the city of Benghazi, a city of roughly 700,000 people.
Auspices is in derogation of international law. You can't simply go into a country and start bombing the hell out of the place on the pretext that you're coming to the rescue of civilians. And since when has President Obama come to the rescue of civilians? He's bombing northern Pakistan with drone attacks. He's killing people in Iraq.
The problems that are going on at the nuclear reactors in Japan are giving a great opportunity, unfortunately, but a great opportunity for people in this country to buy utilities.
As a recognition of my own accomplishments, but rather as an affirmation of American leadership on behalf of aspirations held by people in all nations. To be honest, I do not deserve this prize.
Those weapons of mass destruction got to be somewhere.
Julia, there is truth and there is untruth. To be in a minority of one doesn't make you mad. Julia, my love, I understand how. I don't understand why.
Look, the people you are after are the people you depend on. We cook your meals, we haul your trash, we connect your calls, we drive your ambulances, we guard you while you sleep.
The previous video has been an unpaid public service announcement brought to you by Anonymous. We are Legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget.